Hello, Riikka, and I really hope you are okay this morning, and that work and health and everything are in your favour. I've just woken up, and I am going to try to do you another reading, because I want to. I like doing these. They are a nice way for me to communicate, and especially when I am feeling a little bit fragile and stressed. Oh gosh. Sorry, I will stop talking about myself. You might have been justifiably expecting, more of the waves, and I am certainly going to do that for you. But I am going to be self-indulgent, of course. I kind of think that I'm not ready to tackle such an important book yet. So I have got myself a copy of a book called Authors in Context, Virginia Woolf, by Michael H. Whitworth, Whitworth, Worth. That's how tired I am. Just to give me and, well, not you, because I'm sure you are well aware of everything that is written in here, a little preparation and background before tackling it. But I hope that some of what is written here will help us both as we embark upon what is a very challenging piece of reading for me, and nicely challenging. Thank you. I am happy to be doing so. Oh, this should be perfect. This should be perfect. It's a chapter called... Oops, where are we? It's a chapter called Bergson and Multiple Selves, Mrs. Dalloway and the Waves. And it cuts to the core of what I think I find most interesting about my rediscovery of Virginia. I hope it's relevant. I haven't properly prepared it, so I'll just read a bit, and you can feel free, please, to turn it off whenever it becomes boring. And I hope I'm not reading too quickly. I don't think I am. And also, Jesus, I'll just have a cup of tea because I'm also reading very quietly. Right. Bergson and Multiple Selves, Mrs. Dalloway and the Waves, from Virginia Woolf, by Michael H. Whitworth. Throughout her novels, Woolf is aware that each individual contains several distinct selves. At times, Sigmund Freud's Sigmund Freud's distinction between the conscious and the unconscious, the ego and the id, comes into play. For example, in James's murderous rage against his father, in the opening pages of To the Lighthouse. Yes, that is quite shocking, isn't it? However, elsewhere the different selves are distinguished by other means, and these are better contextualized by reference to Bergson. For example, in Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa sees herself in her dressing table mirror and feels an imperceptible contraction. This contraction has its visible equivalent in her pursed lips. A quotation from Mrs. Dalloway here. She pursed her lips when she looked in the glass. It was to give her face point. That was herself, pointed, dart-like, definite. That was herself when some effort, some call on her to be herself, drew the parts together. She alone knew how different, how incompatible, and composed so for the world only into one centre, one diamond. End of quote. The distinction she draws between her private and public selves develops her earlier reflections about being both Clarissa and Mrs. Richard Dalloway. The idea of composing the disparate elements of the self into a unity is an artistic question that anticipates Mrs. Ramsay's later composition of the unified dinner party. Woolf had explored the same idea in relation to herself in 1922, as she was beginning work on Mrs. Dalloway. Her working routine had been interrupted by a visit from Sydney Waterlow, and she needed to ease her way back into writing. She distinguishes between being very, very concentrated, all at one point, a phrase which anticipates Clarissa's pointed self, and having to draw on the scattered parts of one's character. Excuse me. She also distinguishes between the sometimes artificial role of Virginia and the mode of being merely a sensibility when she is writing. It may seem that Woolf was using her diary to invent ideas of the self, which she would later employ more confidently in the novels. However, she may have been not so much inventing as recollecting. Bergson was understood by many to have championed intuition at the expense of intellect. Intellect was the bad faculty, unnaturally distorting time into a spatialized form. However, he conceded that intellect was a valuable mode of consciousness, though it sliced reality into somewhat arbitrary segments. In doing so, it allowed the human organism to manipulate its environment and so survive. Intellect and intuition each have their uses. Sydney Waterlow's exposition particularly emphasized Bergson's doctrine that, quote, in each of us there are two different selves, one which we reach by deep introspection, and another, more superficial, which is its spatial representation. I like that a lot. It's nice. Unlike the two forms of time, which are absolutely distinct, the two selves are the opposite ends of a sliding scale. A long quote here. At one end of the scale is the state of things that occur when I react to an imminent danger, as to a sudden blow threatening my eye. Here there is no memory, but a close approximation to pure perception. My mental life is narrowed down to a point, and consists solely of a reflex action caused by my brain process. At the other end of the scale, is the diffused mental state which, when we merely remember or are sunk in reverie, includes no perception of a present object, and, by a process which Bergson describes as one of dilation and contraction, our minds range through all the stages between those two extremes. I think I'm going to have to spend some time this afternoon reading the rest of that essay. It's pretty relevant, isn't it? I think it's extremely good. I just wanted to thank you for listening, if you did, and to thank you as well for being patient and kind, because I am not particularly reliable at the moment, and I'm kind of just realizing the limitations of what I can do now, and that is taking some getting used to. Anyway, look, I'll shut up. Have a brilliant day, and hope we'll be in touch. Bye bye.